Hey everyone, today we're joined by a star of professional wrestling. She's been involved in the industry for over 2.5 decades, known for her time in various indie and American, or excuse me, Canadian and American indie promotions, including CZW, IWA Mid-South, Shimmer, GCW, and so much more. She's even known for her work internationally. LuFisto, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Honestly, I love I love the channel. I love the fact that I get to do this, and I interview a lot of people who are, who broke in the last like 5 to 10 years, and that's great. But I really get an enjoyment when I get to talk to someone who's been around for, quite a while because they've seen
Ever.
so many changes. I wasn't going to say that. I wasn't going to say that. But it is true. Like, as far as wrestling goes, like, you've seen so much, and I love that the chance to pick your brain and get that kind of insight. It's great.
Wait, that's what I'm here for. So,
Well, I appreciate
good
it so
question
much.
coming.
Before we even get to do that, I do like to hit the plugs early on and at the end, just so people can check you out, show some support. Where can people find you?
Well, the best way is to go on LuFisto.com, my official website, and you got all the links there to get to my Instagram, my Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it now. Wounded Out LuFisto on Instagram, LuFisto on Twitter. What else? That's like the two I'm on and my website pretty much. So yeah, I'm not really good with social media. I got a YouTube. Go on my YouTube page, official LuFisto. I think I changed it to that name, but just go on LuFisto.com. The link is right there. I try to post matches as much as I can and interviews and all kinds of stuff. So hopefully I'll get my Twitch or whatever I want to do together soon because I want to do online classes.
Oh, that's very
Yeah.
cool. So keep an eye out for that, everybody. I know a lot of people who are either breaking into wrestling, have just broken in, or hope to watch the channel. So this is a place for them to soak up knowledge and get a teaser of what maybe they could do in the future.
Maybe.
So we will have links to all of her socials, her site and everything in the description of every video. So guys, make sure to show some support when talent and the stars of wrestling are nice enough to come onto the show and share their time. Make sure to show some support back.
Nothing I can add to that. It's great.
No argument there, right? Yes, please. Okay, so let's just start right from the beginning. Let's get to the questions. I always love to ask this question. I started watching like the shoot interview era, right? Where I saw Smart Mark video, high spots, K-Pape commentaries, RF, all that stuff. And the question that almost always started everything is, when did you first see pro wrestling? When did you become a fan of it?
I was watching it younger, like really just for fun like this with my grandma when I was about, I think 6 or 7. But I really got hooked in 1994 with the Undertaker Yokuzuna feud.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, I just fell for the Undertaker, what he represent, how like it was the wrestling, but it was everything that came with it, like the smoke, the music, the segments where you would see him building Yokozuna's casket, his friendship with Paul Bearer. Everything to me was like mesmerizing, and I just got hooked. So like I would buy everything from the Undertaker. I would we can get really a lot of besides the weekly wrestling shows, we didn't have much up in Canada. Pay-per-views were hard to get. So I would like order from Coliseum Home Videos, like the VHS, and I would do like tape trading with, I don't even know who, but I still have some of those actually. I would, because through at the same time it was like Bull Nakano and Alondra Blaze. So I discovered Joshi wrestling, Japanese wrestling, and I really, really love that. So yeah, today I still have my Jacob VHS tapes.
That's cool.
Some Gaia, All Japan, like woman, like all kinds of stuff. So I would get that. Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Yeah, so that's pretty much when everything like I got hooked and never let go.
I have to say, you might be my favorite guest because you're the first person to outright say The Undertaker. And just my information, I'm 32 years old. The Undertaker was my everything as a kid. Like, he was my absolute favorite. And it's that exact period because I started watching when I was really young, but once I started retaining stuff, it was a few years later. But I had the '94 Royal Rumble, I had those on VHS tapes, and because we didn't always have cable growing up, and we couldn't afford it, so I rewatched them so many times, and seeing like Undertaker build those caskets, and I can vividly remember Yokozuna slamming his head into the stairs, and Undertaker lifting his hair back, and like those are the things that molded me as a fan. So to hear that same effect on you, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think exactly the same. And I would actually go to video stores. We don't have that anymore. And just rent like tapes. Yep. And would go to my grandma's on the weekend and like copy them. And I would copy my favorite matches, and I would get those best of together. Like I had so many of the Undertaker. Like I even found like some mean Mark Callis stuff from WCW. And you know what? I probably still have those somewhere in a box. I don't think I threw them away. Like I should put them something like somewhere like on YouTube or whatever, because I have like, I remember also I would keep everybody's vignettes. So I think I still have like Steven Regal's He's a Man's Man. Like,
that's amazing.
I love the vignettes like Razor Ramon's. Okay, like I love those, like Duke Droese. Yep.
Someday you have to do like a vlog or something, going through your old merchandise and just showing it off, what you have and the tapes and stuff, because I bet a lot of people would be interested just seeing what you have,
Oh, I'm sure like a lot of people have been asking it to do like I have a Patreon before, but I don't think I knew exactly what I wanted to offer, but now I've been thinking about more like watching old tapes now that I'm a wrestler, how I see it differently, and commenting about that, and go back to like old stuff that I do have here and actually show it and commenting. And I think that's so much more interesting because yes, I'm a wrestler, but I'm also a fan. But the fact that I'm a wrestler, I see things differently now. And when I watch old matches that I used to love, I either love them more for a complete different reason now, or I'm like, well, that wasn't really that good, right? Yeah.
And then you start thinking, like, why did I like it so much? You know what I mean? It's fun to think about.
Yeah, it's fun to think about why, when I was like 14, was this match something so good. And now, after 26 years doing, like, being a professional wrestler, why is it different now? And why don't I like it as much? Or maybe why do I like it more? And now I probably now understand why I would like it so much, because I can see the work behind it and why they put that move there and why did they do such and such things. I see like the work behind the match, the psychology behind it, which back then I didn't understand or know.
And you have the luxury in a lot of cases of having met a lot of these people and shared locker rooms and conversations with them. So that probably just gets even deeper into everything. Like it's a really cool trip down memory lane, I bet.
It is actually one of the coolest moments I had is when I went to Germany. I was with Tatanka.
Oh, that's cool.
And I remember back then there was the feud with him and Lex Luger, and who's going to be with the $1 Million Man, and they were accusing each other and stuff. And that particular night we went to the restaurant and he started talking about, that particular feud and the behind the scenes and what happened and how did it work. And I was like, it was like opening a new world to me, because I've watched this feud as a young fan trying to understand what was up. And now I had one of the guys involved in this explaining to me how it was working the program and what was hard to work with, or what was really easy, what was fun, what was not, like all like details I couldn't see as a fan. And now, I have the guy that was in this feud in front of me telling me how it went. And I was like, wow. I was like, so like
a kid again. I bet you're mesmerized.
Yeah, like a kid, because it was going back to memory lane, but understanding the explanation behind it now. So yeah, that was a very cool moment.
That's awesome. Now, you mentioned the Undertaker being your favorite, but I love learning about other favorites. Like, who were some of the other ones who either inspired you or that you were just such a big fan of watching when you were younger?
Definitely Owen Hart.
Oh, great.
I've always thought that Owen Hart was technically sound, but also one of the greatest heels.
Oh,
Like,
amazing.
I love being a heel, and a lot of things I do, I think, is inspired by Owen, whether I want it or not. I think I do it automatically, like the way he looks at people, or just the little things he does between moves. And sometimes I'll watch my matches, and I'm like, yeah, that's kind of Owen-ish.
You just picked it up naturally, right? It's like osmosis.
It's yeah, man, so good. And the way him, like, one of my favorite matches of all time is him versus Brett at WrestleMania 10. It's
Yeah,
one of the greatest openers to me for a show.
amazing.
So good. I like when I feel wrestling isn't good anymore, or I don't, whatever, I go back to this match and I remember why I love it so much.
I love that, and that's definitely a theme that we'll probably touch on later. Is there's I've talked to a lot of people, and it varies. It's inevitable that your love for wrestling is going to change when you're in it. When it
Mm-hmm.
becomes, when it could be your livelihood, when it becomes your day to day, when it becomes your week to week, like it's going to change no matter what when it becomes that important and when there's ups and downs. But it's good that you're able to look back and remind yourself of that, because some people can't, unfortunately. Some people, they get so bitter that it's hard for them to ever
Mm-hmm.
find that love again. So it's cool that you can.
That's why, like, when it's always like, because when you get into this business like for so long, the first thing people are going to say, if you don't like something, or you said, this is not good or whatever, they say, you're bitter. I'm like, absolutely not. Like, you really don't know me to say that. Because yeah, I love wrestling so much, I still watch it. I'll watch like today's wrestling, I'll go back to watch some older stuff. I remember I've watched everything from the Von Erichs for a while. Like, I was watching all their old shows from the Sportatorium, and all that stuff. Like, I love going back and watching, like, even like old Memphis tapes. The way they work is just yeah, there's a lot of moments you remember, because wrestling, it's not about moves, about moments.
Mhm.
And I think in the old school wrestling, you can get a lot of that. And if you can bring it today and work with today's style, but with the old school psychology, and the way, I don't know, they had a particular way to get you into the match. And I really, really love that. So yeah, I always study wrestling from the past, from today. And yeah, basically, and as you say, things, the more you get involved wrestling, things change. Like, I've never noticed, probably when I was a kid, how much Jake Roberts was good.
Mhm.
And then looking back now as a wrestler, you see the psychology, you see the promos, you see the way he looks at the camera, the little details, and or Roddy Piper.
Yeah.
And then you understand, okay, he's the one that made Hulkamania. I didn't see that when I was a kid. Now I understand it. There's no Roddy, there's probably no Hulkamania. You needed the perfect heel for it to actually get somewhere. And yeah, so always going back, studying, and enjoying wrestling for what it is.
I love that. I love that. Now, you mentioned Roddy Piper and Jake the Snake, and they were phenomenal heels. Obviously, you started watching wrestling a little later. They were
Mhm.
still around, but it was after, that era. So now my question is, I talked about some of your favorites. Were there wrestlers who you just couldn't stand as a kid? Now, this can be one of two things. It could be either because you genuinely didn't think they were good, or the compliment of the matter is they were such good heels that they drove you crazy.
The Miz. Oh my God, The Miz. I hated him so bad. But at first it was like I was really annoyed. Like, I don't like the word X-Pac eat, because X-Pac is so nice. He's
Mhm.
one of the nicest men I've ever met. But it was like legit. Like, I really didn't like him. And with time, I was like, no, this guy's getting good. This guy's good. This guy, like, he knows. He understands, and you just want to punch him because he's so good at it. Definitely one of them. If there's someone I didn't like for what
As an Owen fan, were you a Brett fan, or were you kind of hating Brett because he was always feuding with Owen?
No, I didn't hate Brett because you can't hate Bret Hart because he's so good. But when with the friends, it was like, oh, I'm Owen, and then no, I'm Brett. Like we would argue, but definitely, I mean, with Brett, especially what he represents to Canadian wrestling,
Mm-hmm.
and he's still involved today with Dungeon Wrestling up in Calgary, and his sons are now, and he's definitely someone that once in a while he's going to get that comment out there. And I was like, man, you can hate on him, but the man is right. The man knows. Like, I think he was talking about when people are outside waiting for the dives and you clearly see them. I'm
Yeah.
like, and then like people like, oh, they were like complaining. I was like, hey, the man is right. The man is right. What do you want me to say? So yeah, I love Bret Hart, and I got a lot of respect for him. And I was fortunate enough to meet him, and he was very a gentleman.
That's very cool. Okay, well, since you brought up the Canadian roots, then I have to say Shawn Michaels might have been somebody that you had issues with it back then, you know?
Well, I didn't hate Shawn because I've always felt Shawn was really talented.
Nominal.
But of course, with this, I think I hated more the Brett screwed Brett kind of thing.
That's fair. That's fair.
I'm like, no, Brett didn't screw Brett. I'm like, anyway, it's no, I
Cool.
didn't hate Shawn Michaels. I don't know, like nobody comes to mind right now, but because probably when I didn't like them, I would just fast forward, or
Makes
I would
sense.
just watch specific wrestlers that I loved. I'm sure like I would go back to old tapes and I would be like, oh God, no. But I mean, right now, nobody comes to mind. Women's wrestling for a while in general, I didn't like it. When it was the gravy matches and the bra and panties matches, and it's like, and that's what people were expecting from me as well in the indies. I was like, come on. So thank God it changed.
The evolution of women's wrestling is absolutely something I'm going to dive into long form in the future because that's so fascinating. Also, since you did bring up the dive, a quick channel plug as far as dives go. In our second interview with Brian Kendrick, guys, check it out. He talks about, people standing around with dives and how to make it look better, how to
Mhm.
not stare at the referee when you're about to kick out. He offers some advice with that, and just, he's a veteran just like you, so it's great to have that insight on the channel. So check that out if you can, guys.
Oh, I'm sure. And he's a teacher too. So I'm sure he has a lot of different tricks to avoid to be just like looking and waiting. And you got a crowd you can interact with. You can be selling. You can be complaining to the referee and then turn, oh, shit. And then, it happens. There's ways around it. And sometimes it's not always like easy to do because for some reason other dude or dudette is waiting up there and she's taking forever to jump, so you're like trying to kill time. You're like it happens, but that's the thing with wrestling. I mean, it's not like being a stunt woman. You can't go for take two, take three. It has to be perfect, like right on the spot, so you can't do it again. So
That's the art, right? That's the
yeah,
fun. And
that's the art right there.
so we talked about your fandom. I'm so curious, how did you eventually break in? Because, I just talked to, somebody actually just last night, and they broke in 2017 or 2018. So when they broke in, they had the internet. They had everything, at their fingertips. Obviously, the internet existed, but it wasn't what it is now. How did you find wrestling?
Oh my God, like TV, and one of my friends, he was really good with my friend Luke was following the dirt sheets, and so he knew about tape trading, and there was like local indie wrestling in a city nearby that my other friends knew because their cousins were living in that area. So it was really like people talking about it, and eventually would get to you because you were a wrestling fan. And one day they just brought me to that place, Drummondville, the city was. So that was my first indie show. where people were riding and throwing I don't know what's censored on your show, but you
Oh,
could
you
do
can say
that, like
anything. It's fine.
piss. Throwing piss on the wrestlers
Oh,
and
wow.
spit and cigarette butts. It was like so nasty. And we loved a team that was called the Prisoners, and they were heels, but everybody wanted to fight us. Like, here's me, like, what, 15, 16 years old? What the hell? Like, we were there with our signs because my friend Just Lane, he was such a great artist, so he would draw the wrestlers. Actually, if you watch Survivor Series 97, when Bret Hart, gets
Mhm.
screwed, there's a sign out there it's DX with a Canadian Leafs on their crotch. That was my friend who made that sign. I was like
Wow.
right
Okay.
next to him. Yeah, they make like there's a big camera shot on that sign. So
That's
that's the
awesome.
kind of signs we would go around at shows with. Um, so yeah, basic and through knowing this particular like wrestling indie wrestling promotions, again, my friend Luke heard that they were opening up a school in my hometown of Sorrel with local wrestlers, and everybody was subscribing. So I was like, oh, I'll go too. And oh, you sure want to go? I'm sure there's no other girls. And of course, I went there, and there was nobody else. Me. Even the teacher Pierre was like, it's really tough. Like it's tough, like physically, but mentally, it's terrible. And for a girl, it's even worse. It's like I'll be fine. Looking back, it's like I had no clue. I had no clue how hard it would be. But yeah, that's how it started. Though, school opening up and me wanting to prove everybody wrong. My stepfather, everybody that it's not because I'm a woman that I'm small and out of shape and whatever that I can't do it. So I subscribed.
So there was a lot of doubt by some people.
Oh, everybody. I think my friend Luke was probably the only one who's like fuck him, like come with me and whatever. And I was one of the I was the student that would always try the new moves and was always first to like, hey, who wants to do this? Me. And like I really wanted to show I could do it, and it was very challenging for me, and it felt really rewarding as well. I didn't have a good relationship with my stepfather at home. It was real bad, but every time I went to the wrestling class and I would pick up stuff like real quickly. Like even the teachers were like, how the hell? Like I think my first bump was not perfect, but it was pretty good for a first bump. It
Oh,
was
wow.
it was in me for some reason. And that made me really proud. And as much as at home, it was more of a you won't do anything good in your life, you're out of shape, you're fat, blah blah. Everything would say like wrestling was kind of my safe haven where I was like, well, you know what? I'm good at this. Even if you believe it's not for me, because I'm a girl, I'm good at this and I love it. So
That's awesome. It almost sounds like it was your therapy, in a way.
it definitely was. I think a lot of people will say that wrestling saved them.
Mhm.
But for me, it's a reality. It's as much as throughout the year it's been a struggle because I was often the only woman in a locker room, the only woman to do hardcore, the only woman to, wanting to push the boundaries and be accepted as an equal and wrestle the guys, which thank God is not a problem anymore. I mean,
Mhm.
all the girls can go out there and wrestle whoever they want, is which is the reason why we fought so hard because that's what we wanted. But back then, like it was terrible, and we would get beat and stretch and punch and um just as a reminder that we didn't belong in there with them, but got to keep going, and if you're hurt you don't say it and you keep pushing. And but yeah, I mean, as much as I cried, in a way it made me feel a lot stronger. And it was like, no, I'm gonna get up and I'll show you. So yeah, um it was bad in a way and really good in another way.
It's one of those unfortunate things where you don't really want to say, "Oh, I'm glad this happened to me," because it's awful stuff. But on the other hand, being able to persevere through it helped to make you who you are and helped to make your journey the way it was. So at least there's a silver lining.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm really trying to see the positive in everything. So,
Easier said than done sometimes, I'm sure, but at least you're trying.
yeah, especially back then. Now, look, looking back after so many years and I'm 43 now. Obviously, I don't think the same way I did when I was like 25.
Mm-hmm.
I see things differently. There's things I understand more now that I look like in a review mirror instead of being right there at that moment. But yeah, and I mean, everything was done so that women wrestling would be better for the ones that would come after. And obviously,
Worked.
it worked. It worked because now there's so many women involved in wrestling. It was hard to find one opponent back then. Now, tons of female wrestlers everywhere.
Let's put it this way: on NXT just 2 nights ago, they had four women's matches. Four women's
Yeah.
matches on a 2 hour show. That's basically unheard of. Even now it's not common, but back then it was non-existent.
Oh my God, no, yeah. We were the popcorn match, the special attraction match. If there was one women match, like there's some shows that were not at all. And now, as you see, like even on TV, there's a lot more women's matches. And when I was actually running shows when I lived in Pennsylvania, it was half and half. Like half the matches were female matches and half the matches were men matches. Like we would mix everything, and it was like, yeah, half and half. So, and you'll see that more often now on several shows where there's going to be two women's matches, an intergender, and then a mixed tag. And it's like women are everywhere on the card.
And what's cool about that is I'm not going to get the exact number, so bear with me here. But generally, I think it's like 60 or maybe like 55, 45% for the male women audience for WWE. And now at including the Performance Center, the talent, it's around like 60%, 40%. And again, that's just so different than what it used to be. Like in the Attitude Era, especially like the height of like 98 and 99, like there was maybe like four women on TV, period.
Yeah, there was maybe four wrestlers, and the other ones were valets and managers,
Mm-hmm.
or I'm thinking Lillian Garcia as an announcer, like they were doing something else. But as wrestlers, not too many.
I still want to get back on your training, but since this kind of brought it up, you obviously had the realization at the time when you were breaking, because I believe it was 97. So you obviously could see where women's wrestling was at that time. I mean, what were your goals at that point? Like just when you were breaking, like what were your hopes? Like, did you have expectations?
Yeah, I wanted to prove everybody wrong. I wanted to prove them that women can do it too, and they can do it better than the guys. Like it was always like, oh, women's wrestling's not good. Women's wrestling's boring. I was like, yeah, it is. I will always say that, and it that's one thing I say about when I was arguing with AEW and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Women's wrestling will suck if you allow it to.
Yeah.
If you have the same criteria as men wrestling when it comes to talent, when it comes to building the matches, when it comes to time that's allowed to it, women's wrestling can be awesome. But if you give them 2 minutes with people who are not trained or people who are not in the right places because of who they are and not what they can bring, it's gonna suck.
Yeah.
And the same thing's gonna happen with the guys. It's not even a gender thing.
Yeah.
But I feel it happens a lot more with women's wrestling, where my God, it's 2 minute matches. I'm like, cool. There's a women's matches, but how much story? How many emotions can you like share, or within 2 minutes when your entrance is like more than 30 seconds?
Yeah.
The entrances sometimes are longer than the match itself. So
it's wild.
Yeah, exactly. So no, that was definitely one of my goals. And when there was no other women, and I says, I'm going to wrestle the guys. And they were like, no, you can't do this. It's against everything. Who do you think you are? Big headed, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I just want to be a wrestler. And they try to have me being a manager, whatever. It's like, I'll be a manager, fine. But I'll be the manager of, let's say, my partner, and some shows I'll be in his corner, but other shows I'm going to be wrestling, or I can do both, doesn't matter. But in the end, I need to wrestle. And it took a while for people to understand and actually get it. And that was always one of my goals, to be seen as an equal. And I didn't want people to say like, oh, she's a great female wrestler. I just wanted them to say, wow, what a great wrestler. And that whoever I'm fighting, whether it's a man, a woman, a bear, whatever, that I can still like give you good matches.
And to back up your point again, like my job is, a lot of what I have to do is I have to pay attention to the business metrics of wrestling, and tell Becky Lynch and Rhea Ripley women don't draw when they're bringing in some of the highest numbers in all of any company in any period. They're drawing
definitely
huge.
Just look at Becky recently. She went to NXT. What happened? Numbers went up.
Yeah.
So
technically, this week's NXT, this is gonna date the show, but this week's NXT drew more than Dynamite, and that's no shade against Dynamite, of course, but it just shows the power of Becky and Rhea. Both of them were on the show right there.
Exactly. And I mean, when you look at a woman like Rhea Ripley, she looks like a wrestler. She's fighting like, it doesn't matter like whatever gender. She looks like she's someone who could like beat your ass.
Yeah.
And that's the way I love women wrestlers to look like.
Mm-hmm.
She looks like an athlete, she hits like a fighter. So that's why I really, really love her. And I know that I really loved her match with Charlotte at WrestleMania.
So physical.
And I love Bianca Belair for the same reason. She's athletic, she's impressive, she's strong. We are so, when looking at those women, we're so far away from the model cookie sheet like women wrestlers. And I mean, you need some of them. It's not any shade against them, but you need those who make the division look impressive, scary, challenging. So yeah, that's why like they definitely stand out, and they're better than many of the guys on TV.
Absolutely. Back to your training, let's dial it back just a little bit. Could you talk about who you were training with, who you were training under, and just what the training was like day to day?
I first started to train with like 4 local wrestlers: Pierre Marchessault, Eric LaRoche, Patrick Lewis, and Yves Miette. And we really started like he's really Pierre was in charge of everything, and we really started with what was the basics of wrestling: the arm bars, the bumps, the headlocks, takedown. And then the rolls also, so we would be able to move forward to the arm drags, the hip tosses, like the
apologies for interrupting. I apologize. Just real quick, was it in a ring or were you on mats outside? Because I know
it was in a ring, but it was a boxing ring.
Oh, stiff.
It was a boxing ring. It was terrible. Oh yeah, but you know what? It's the only ring I knew at this point, so I thought that it would be this way. And so when I first like landed in a real ring, I'm like, oh,
that's much.
But we would also train outside on the floor, stretching, running, sit-ups, push-ups, all these wonderful things. And it was really basic, but I think it gave me like a good basics. After that, and I moved to Montreal because for college, where I was studying photography. And the school in Sorel didn't last too long. I had my first 2 matches, Only a few months after I started
Oh
training,
wow.
and after unfortunately they closed the wrestling part of it because there was also a boxing school. The boxing school is actually still open, but the wrestling school was only open a few months. So, I mean, the timing was good that I was moving to Montreal to study because there was a lot more wrestling promotions. So I started wrestling, training with at the Royal Wrestling Ring with Len Kojak Shelley, who was wrestling for international wrestling in Montreal. I was training with him and his son Eric. It's funny because Eric was in the tournament for the first cruiserweight championship at WWE back in, my God, 98, I think, or
Oh, okay.
yeah, I think so. I think it was 98, like the first ever like cruiserweight belt they had. He was in that tournament. So I trained with him. And Len was a very good friend of Viviane Vachon. And that's the reason why actually he came to see me at a training I was attending. He's like, "You seem bored, and I see a lot of Viviane in you. You want to push, you want to steer the pot, change things just like her." So that's why he took me under his wing, and I've learned so much from him. Only in a few months because it wasn't long either. Like it was so hard to get schools then. So I went really from Sorel to Len to then I ended up at the ICW in Montreal, which when I learned under the Prue brothers. And what really I think ended up being my last training besides like seminars or doing trainings here and there, because it was a lot back then of learning by yourself. Old school wrestlers would take you under their wing, show you, and then they would just throw you in the lion's den and then like, "Hey kid, gotta learn." And then you would learn at every batch, which is one thing that changed today with the quality of wrestling schools we have everywhere. But basically that was my training. It was learning things here and there, learning, a few things by myself, making mistakes, doing it again, and trials and errors, a lot of it.
Do you think, because there's a positive and negative to everything, especially this, the fact that people didn't have cell phones to record every match you had back then, do you think that was beneficial in the sense that you could make more mistakes? Or do you think the fact that people can be easily seen at any time now, like I guess it could be both, right? It could be both a detriment and a
Yeah,
positive.
I feel it's a double-edged sword because when when you have to kind of figure things out yourself, when you get it, you actually understand better, I think. But then today, like if you have a good teacher who explains you how things should be, the working etiquette, which I knew nothing about because nobody, showed me that you should shake everybody's hands or whatever the etiquette was. Um, and like I probably got heat. There's a lot of things that I got heat for because not because I was an asshole, I just didn't know better.
Yeah.
Now today's like, here's how you should act in, a locker room. Here's how you should act with a veteran. Here's how these are things I had to learn on my own. And even the psychology of the match, like my wrestling classes were not long enough for me to get into that. And now when you go to a wrestling school, I go sometimes to the IWS wrestling school, who's Shane Hawk, which is one of my students
Oh
that
wow.
I trained him a little bit when he started. Now he trains people, and he trained a lot at whoever was training at IWS before. The way he teaches, like as soon as they get in and they get into matches, he teaches psychology and why you should put this there and why this should be put somewhere else in the match. And I wish I had that because I feel it took me so much longer to figure it out than the young kids today, where they get everything, even the promos, like they get all the good information like right from the start. Where as for me, I really had to figure it out. And I feel I lost a lot of time.
Hmm.
Now people like sometimes within 2 years, they're ready for, the big time or whatever. And back then it was more, you fight your way up, you show that you're tough, you don't complain. It was, it's another generation, another way to do things. And um it's very different. I don't know if it's good or bad. Sometimes I feel today it's too much too soon
Hmm.
for a lot of people. They don't get to appreciate what's really happening to them. That's probably why when I see someone who's been on the indies for years and they finally get a shot, I'm like, finally, good for them. Because man, I've seen them like sleep in their car and eat peanut butter
Yeah.
like sandwiches, and now they go out of the school. Sometimes they're not even out, and they get picked up by the performance center, which is an amazing place you want to go to train. And right away, you're in a system where you're taken care of, training, and your life is dedicated to wrestling, like almost right from the start. And for us, it was just like, you work during the week, and then you go on trips on the weekend, and you learn there, and then you go back to your regular work, and you try to train at night. You try to mix everything together. And now there's so many indies right now, with the internet being so much more than what it used to be. Like my first matches, I was going to my shows with a little camera, and I would ask someone, can you please film my match? And then I would have to find a way to kind of put it on a computer, so I would keep the files but on the mini DVs. And now it's just like people right away, they're 18 years old, whatever, they're on Fight TV, they're on
Yeah.
independent wrestling television, whatever, which is awesome. But it's, my God, it's, to me, it's black and white from what it was and what it is today.
It's definitely an entirely different world. For
Yeah.
you, did you, even putting aside like all that past, as the technology advanced and everything, have you been able to find yourself taking advantage of it? Is that something that came natural to you, or was it something that you kind of were a little hesitant of just because you didn't necessarily know it?
Um, I feel I still struggle with whatever social media, because the TikTok and whatever, I'm like not really into it. I think at first I was like really trying to get into it. I've always been an open book. I would, write what I was thinking, what I was feeling, whatever. And then with the years, I started to be more private, and not that I despise social media. We really need it, to promote the shows and everything. But I feel a lot of people get their popularity from what they do online and not necessarily in the ring.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel some of the quality of wrestling kind of went away with that, because um, I feel that people now, when they watch a show, there's things that they won't. How can I phrase that right? Um, they will accept things that years ago they would have said, like, they would probably chant "you fucked up" a lot more, or they would have complained that it wasn't good, and now suddenly it's okay. Which, I mean, nobody wants to go through the "you fucked up" chant or just being dissed online. Um, it's really hard for me to explain, but um, that's definitely one thing I've noticed, where if the person is cool online, the crowd will accept a lot more. They will be a lot more lenient into accepting things that are not
Gotcha.
good.
Yeah.
If that
Forgiving.
makes sense.
Yeah, they're more forget, especially like
Yeah.
in 2023. If and I don't want to throw any shade on anybody, but if you're a quote unquote meme wrestler where you do something that takes off because it's viral and it's funny, you're going to get a lot of fans, even if it's not necessarily good or even good for wrestling. People are going to like you because, hey, that's funny, or that was quite the moment, and then they'll inherently forgive more of what you do as opposed to maybe somebody else who didn't have that viral moment.
Yeah, or they'll put people like they're gonna get a shot to someone who was exactly like you said, who went viral with a stupid thing because like he was popular online. When you got another wrestler that's so much better and has a greater physique or more experience or whatever, and they're not gonna use it because the other guy was viral, and they're gonna use this person before, which I think sometimes hurts the quality of the show. But then again, I mean, um, it's I always say it's the promoter's money; they can do what they want.
And it's one of those things that's tough because on one hand, you know, if you can capitalize on it, that can be a lot of attention. But a lot of times those things are one-offs, and just because they had one popular moment, you're not going to get a return on that investment.
And if you invest on somebody who's good, somebody who's got experience, or somebody who has like a young kid who has tons of potential, then you can work a long program with this person and go on and actually, yes, invest in that person that can become like a stable of your promotion because you put the time in, because this person you could actually work with, and it was just not a one-off, or something that was popular at that moment and a year later is not anymore. But it is what it is. That's social media. It comes with it, I guess.
No, you're definitely right about that. And I want to go back a little bit again. You talked about your first matches. Now, in my notes, I had what I could find was your earliest match, but they're rarely right, especially for the 90s, because like they don't have everything documented back then. So the earliest
No, the
match
only way for you to know my matches is to go on my website. I put like every single matches I had
that's
there.
awesome.
It's all there.
And again, that'll be linked in the description, guys. So go subscribe, check them out. But the earliest match I had written down in my notes that I found online was against Super Headhunter in Montreal on May 24th, 1998. But I believe you must have started in 97 based on what you were talking about before.
Yeah, my first match was June 19, 1997.
Could you talk about that a little bit? Because I'm sure you must have been extremely nervous. Could you talk about who it was with if you have it documented, so you probably remember.
Oh yeah. It's against the only girl that was available in the province of Quebec at this time. Her name was Sophie. And I remember not being that nervous for the first match. It was under a tent outside. It was hot. I was changing in the back of a truck. And I remember being a little bit more overwhelmed about the whole process of the day, I think, than the match, and just being there. The first match went really well. We had a spot outside where she would throw me into a post, and I didn't know how to protect myself really from at that moment. So I just put my hand up. I had like the biggest freaking bruise on my forearm. Like there was a bump, like it looked like I had two forearms, like a double one. And so yeah, the first match, this one, I believe it was okay. The promoter, his name was Henri Dusty, very nice man, and he was very nice to me. And he said I did pretty good, so I'm gonna take his word for it.
So you got the positive feedback though. That had to be nice.
For this one, yeah, after that one, it went downhill. Oh my god. I think the fact that I had the good feedback the first one, some of the wrestlers didn't like it. And right from the start, like the following match, they started to bully me, throw water at me, thinking, you think you're better than us? You won't last a year. And I was like, I'm 17. I don't know why the hell they're saying that, doing that. And it's like, wow. I'm like, hey, welcome to wrestling.
That's one of the things that would probably improve quite a bit is that kind of atmosphere, especially like you were a minor at the time. Like to give that kind of treatment to somebody who, you in the United States, you'd either just be graduating high school or you haven't even graduated high school yet. Like that's crazy.
Yeah, I was just done with high school in 97, like June. Well, I was so that's June 19. Like I probably had 2 weeks left of school in high school at this moment.
Wow. One thing that you brought up that I do want to kind of talk about, as you can tell from this interview, like I go off on side tangents and deep dives into everything, so we don't get super far, but it's fun. It's a fun chat. You talked about how you had to change the truck, and that's something that I've always found really interesting because, of the gender difference. And you're working a lot of times small venues where there might be one room for people to change in. So you might have to go do it in the bathroom, or you might have to go into a janitor's closet. For example, even in an indie out here, when the Bella Twins left WWE the first time, like 10, 12 years ago, they had to change in like this small little room in like a town hall, and like for them compared to big WWE locker rooms, that was shocking, right? And I'm not taking that away from them because it is, but that's something that you probably had to deal with forever. I mean, maybe now it's still to an extent. Has that improved though for women?
Well, here's one thing. One thing I did, and that's one thing I got a lot of heat for. When I was at the ICW, when I showed up there was like locker rooms. There was two locker rooms, a babyface locker room and a heel locker room. They were not together. They're not mixed on like each room was on the opposite side of
Even in
the venue.
1997. Wow.
Yeah, 97. And the only thing we had was a small bathroom, and I felt it's like smelled like piss. So I was like, you know what? I'm one of you guys. I'm a wrestler. Look elsewhere. I'll cover with a t-shirt and a towel, but I'm not going to change in there. Like you have a nice spacey like locker room with chairs and tables, and I'm gonna go in the shithole.
Yeah.
No. So right away, like I made it a point that I'm an equal. I will change in that locker room too. If it bothers you, turn around. I will do everything I can so you don't see anything. Mm-hmm. And if you need privacy, I will leave. I will turn around, anything. And some of the guys got it, but some of them were like, oh, are you're trying to get laid, whatever? I was like, no, I'm a worker just like you. Respect me for being a worker, and I will do the same. I'm not here to look at your little pee-pee. And the women, the wives were like, oh, she's a hoe, whatever. Yeah. She's trying to get with her man. I'm like, and like I was with my boyfriend, he would come see me wrestle, and I was like, no, I'm really not interested. But because I'm a woman, you're gonna throw me in that little shithole? No. So I got a lot of heat for that, but I did, stand my ground, and it was like, no, I'm a wrestler, I'm an equal, and I'm gonna stay here.
Over time, did they start, because again, like we talked about the evolution of women's wrestling, and today, there's still going to be indie shows where you might be the only woman, and there might be one or two, but it's gotten a little better in that regard. Is there more thought put into that? Like if there's 3 women on a show, 4 women on a show,
yeah, no.
Will they have a room?
Some women are more comfortable changing in the back room. Sometimes we have our own locker room, which is great. Sometimes we don't. Mm-hmm. And usually I'll change with the guys, do whatever I can, and if I feel I can't cover up for certain, let's say change a bra, then I'll go away and I'll go change it in the bathroom or something like that. But besides that, no, I'm still changing with the boys. And even some guys, like I remember it's probably B-Boy. I think it's B-Boy said that. I was changing, and there's a guy who comes in and goes like, oh, I'm so sorry. And B-Boy goes like, man, you don't know LuFisto? She's one of the boys. So I'm like, good. I'm like, you know what? Just you won't see anything. He's like, oh man, that's cool. If you're cool, I'm like, yeah, don't worry.
It's good though that's kind of the mindset now. It's as long as you're comfortable, as opposed to them. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like before, it sounds like a lot of high school stuff, and I'm sure it still happens.
Yeah, you do you. If you prefer being somewhere else, just go. If I'm cool with it, that's fine. And we all have different ways of dealing with this, and whatever floats your boat.
that has to be the biggest positive wrestling is made, is terms of, whether you're LGBTQ, whether you're
Mm-hmm.
a woman, whether, whatever, race. Obviously it's not perfect. There's always going to be stuff to work on, probably forever. And, there's definitely stuff still to work on now, but the strides they made, especially I would say like since the pandemic, it feels like it's really taken steps forward. And I think maybe like the speaking out movement had a lot to do with it, and just, society changing. But that I think is a huge plus.
That definitely helped, but I feel also the fact that people like really miss wrestling, because I mean, some places in the United States they were still doing shows, but in Canada we had no wrestling at all for over a year, and other places, on the planet as well, and shows were like very limited, and people like covering up and sitting, afar from each other. That was not like the bond that you get being like with other wrestling fans or other wrestlers, the camaraderie of being with your peers. And I feel people like really miss that. So when everything opened up again, it's like people were like, I miss this so much that I feel there's more fans going to the shows, there's more wrestlers, and as you mentioned, there's so many more. It's like everything's open to yeah, LGBTQ. Doesn't matter what color of skin you are, if you are male, female, non-binary, trans. I love that it's just a huge bouquet of different people all together celebrating wrestling, doing what they love together. I was just on Effy's Big Gay Brunch, and man, I just love it. So much love in that locker room. I love Pollo Del Mar. We have a freaking top freaking drag queen with us. Like, so good, so good, so nice. Loves wrestling. Definitely like a big fan of wrestling. She everything she does is thought of, and she puts so much passion and love into it. And I love Effy. I would spend days with Effy. He's so cool. Yeah, all straight, gays, whatever, we were all together, and it was just a great day.
And that's what wrestling should be, like
Yeah.
even if you take away all of that, like, if you look at a wrestling locker room, especially like I'm thinking about like Chikara, right? And you would have Chikara and Ring of Honor, and they would do shows together, and you would have somebody like Shelton Benjamin in the locker room who was like a just massive human being, a stud of a man, athlete.
Hmm.
And then you had like a huge like comic book fan brought to life, and like in real life, these people would never probably interact, but because of the love of wrestling, they can come together. And I think that applies to, race, gender, everything, like orientation. Like, it should be for everybody in that sense.
Yeah, there's something in wrestling. There's really something for everybody, which is cool. Like, not everybody loves death matches, but if you do, there's some of those. And some people really love lucha, but if you don't, there's strong style wrestling. There's like tons and tons of style and different things in wrestling for you to enjoy.
Very cool. And you've already been so good with your time. Thank you. I'm gonna ask just a few more questions and then we'll get on out of here. Again, we've made it to like 1998, so hopefully we can chat again in the future. But I did want to ask you, we talked about your goals when you were first trying to break in, how it was like your desire just to prove people wrong. Once you started having matches, did your goals change? Like, did you look at WWF at the time, WCW, ECW even, and were you like, these are places I want to go? Or did you look at Japan because, you talked about tape trading, you talked about how it was taken more seriously. Was that in your mind, like, I'd like to go there, or something else?
Yeah, for sure. Since I've started watching wrestling, watching WWF, definitely it was, one of the goals that I wanted to go there, because, it was the big place. But Japan definitely was one, like, was on the bucket list for sure. Watching people like Aja Kong and Minami Toyota, my favorite, Akira Okudo, and Bull Nakano, also one of my favorites. I really wanted to go there because their style is, I love their style. And actually, some of my best matches I feel are with Joshi wrestlers. I just feel so comfortable in there with them. It's just feels right. I wrestled Utami Yamashita recently, but also Reina Yamashita, and it's like or Makiito. Like I'm very blessed that I had like three wonderful Japanese ladies sharing the ring with me in the past year, and I love it. I just love it. I love. There's something in them that I don't know. Japanese wrestling has a special heart in my place in my heart. So yeah, I feel really blessed that I was able to share the ring with them in the past year. And yeah, and I mean, when I was doing hardcore, ECW would have been great. And WCW, like what a lot of people don't know is I was in contact with WCW,
Really?
and I had emails with ECW, but with the good timing that I have, the WCW, they stopped having women's matches, so that went down the shitter.
That figures.
And ECW was struggling financially, so that even nothing happened in there.
Oh, the timing.
And when the knockouts happened, I was scheduled to have a tryout with back then TNA. And when Hogan and Bischoff joined in, my tryout was canceled.
Wow.
And the knockouts went. Yeah, I have the worst. I always have the foot in the door, and some. I was going to ROH. I was already working for ROH online during the pandemic, and that's we were ready to. The borders just opened up, and as soon as we were starting to do things, and I love the women's division that was there with Maria and Bobby Cruz, and well, they get sold, so I never got there. Well, I got there online with the Beyond the Belt show, but where I was like analyzing the female matches, but I actually never got in the ring. Nope, they were sold before, so that's my luck.
That's wild. Promoters got to work on that. One place I think you would definitely fit in, the NWA women's division has picked up a lot in recent years, and they have a lot of young talent. So having someone like you there to work with them could just be incredible for everybody involved.
I'd love to. I've worked with Camille. Love Camille. She's awesome. Kenzie Page is so nice. I love Natalie Markova. It's all people like I really I would love to work with them. And I mean, not even necessarily in the ring, like even behind the scenes, helping them with the matches and setting up like matches and work on the psychology. And that's definitely that would be a place where I feel I could bring a lot.
Very cool. And again, I appreciate your insight and on your unfortunate luck, because that's wild that it happened like 4 times in like 4 major companies.
Oh, well, yeah, 4 or 5, whatever. Yeah, I don't.
Real quick, though, on that subject, who were you in contact with ECW and WCW? Do you remember specifically?
It was like emails I got. It was like, my God, I think.
I know it's been a while.
I don't remember who sent the message because we're talking like 98, 99.
Yeah.
But I know there was a training schedule with Simon Diamond, Dawn Marie, and someone else. And for some reason, it didn't happen. It got canceled. But wow, we're talking about when I was getting emails from a 56K and my phone line was busy when I was online. That was a long time ago, but
different world.
I know those 2 names were in the emails, but I can't remember who sent the email.
You're right, though, where you really would have fit in ECW because of the hardcore. And then even for WCW, like before they stopped booking women, like you talked about your love for Japanese wrestling, and they had, Medusa working with several Mako Satomura, young, really young work. And that's crazy because she's still incredible to this day. Like the fact that she was working in WCW.
I've worked her. So
oh, you have?
Yeah, I had a match with Mako Satomura, and
we need to hear about this before we wrap things up, because I'm just curious, because I'm a fan of her. I think she's great.
She is a great, very passionate. Like, yeah, she's one of the proof that women over 30 are not done.
Hmm.
They're just experienced, just as the guys. She brings so much more to the table with her experience. And I was blessed to work with her in 2018 when we were in the finals of the Femme Fatale tournament in Germany for
Oh,
WXW.
all right. All right. Wow,
Mm,
that had to be very cool. And
yeah, I
but
was.
you know,
She kicked
two
my ass
veterans.
pretty good, but that was
Definitely lives up to her reputation.
yes, she does.
No, but it's great. It's great to see it. You know, you brought up an interesting point. That was definitely a reputation women had for a long time, where it was like, you know, if you're over 30, especially if you're over
And
35, or
it's
if
it's still today,
it's
unfortunately.
still
It's still
there.
there.
I
Oh
know if you
yeah,
have a
I feel
kid,
it. I feel it to my core.
hopefully that starts getting worked on more and more because,
I
like
hope so.
yourself, look at Asuka. She's still killing it. And I know we're going to talk about her if we ever do a second interview because I saw in my notes that you worked with her and definitely want to get into that. But there shouldn't be that cutoff.
Yep. I mean, how many men right now are over 40s and they are killing it because why? Because they bring so much more experience and knowledge. It should be the same for women. Don't look at age. Look at what they can bring to your promotions. And there's a lot of women over 30, 35, even 40 that can, that can still kill it. And yeah, I mean, age is just a number and it's real. It hurts a lot more when we wake up the next day, but you won't see it in the ring the night before.
Fantastic. All right, the last question I always like to end with this, and if we do a second one, I'll ask the same question because, in my opinion, the answer can change. What does the future look like for LuFisto?
I hope there's some agent work in it.
Okay.
I I'd really like I do it when I go to shows. I give advice. I help the people get their matches together. But I would really love to do it on a professional level
Mhm.
because I think that's really one thing I'm good at. And I'm good at anticipating how the crowd will react to certain things. That's one of my strengths, I believe. And I'm one of my strengths also is to make sure I can put forward what you're good at and hide all your weaknesses. So I think I could be really good for a women's locker room.
Honestly, that makes a lot of sense. As far as in-ring work goes, do you have, is it one of those deals where you'll wrestle as long as you can, as long as your body holds up? Is it one of those deals
Yeah,
where you have an
yeah,
age in mind?
definitely. And why I say that is because in 2019 I thought I was done because my knee was acting up, and I was like, I don't like this anymore, and I just want to stop. So I'm retiring at the end of the year. What happened? My knee got better, and I started to have killer matches with Josh Alexander and whatever you name it.
So
And I
cool.
was like, oh, I still can do this. So yeah, I'm not saying ever I'm gonna retire again. I'll just stop when I feel the time is right.
One other thing, training. Given your insight and given the fact that you've helped train people in the past, do you ever see a time where maybe go into training full time? Is that something that you'd like to pursue maybe?
I actually asked a promotion recently if they would let me run their women's division. Um, I'm still waiting for an answer, but that's really something I would like to do to go. I don't know if I would train every week, but I'd really like to offer like all female classes where we work on psychology and matches and character. And I'd really like to have a group of girls to work with and, go from there.
Seems like you want to do like an advanced class, like maybe not teach
Yes.
everyone from the ground up, but once
Yeah.
they're learning the finer parts, that's what you want to.
Yeah. I think I'm much better at working on details and fixing things than I could definitely work from the start and I can teach that, but it's not where um I wouldn't say I don't like it as much, but I think where I thrive and where I feel like I don't know. I feel really fulfilled is when I take that person and that I fix the little things and we change, a few things so everything gets better. That's where I belong.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for your time. You've been unbelievable. One more time, where can people check you out and what should they look for?
LuFisto.com, my website. LuFisto on Twitter X. Wounded Out LuFisto on Instagram. And it's either official LuFisto or Luffy channel. I don't know which one is working again on YouTube.
And we will have links to all of her stuff in the description, guys, of every video. Again, please be sure to show some support. Show some support to us, too. Follow us on Twitter at Armbars, Sidebar, or X. Follow us on Instagram at Armbars and Sidebars. And follow us and subscribe on YouTube at Armbars and Sidebars. Be sure to leave comments. As long as there's nothing hateful, we respond to everything. We love the conversations. We're growing a nice community. This chat was a delight. Thank you so much for offering your time. I call you an indie wrestling legend. So the fact that you spared some time for us, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Until next time, guys. Later.